My brother got my fiancée pregnant, and my dad gave him the business I built, but I walked away, and what happened after left them speechless. I am Ross, a man who for the first 33 years of his life believed that hard work and responsibility were the only currency that mattered. I learned that lesson early, not because my parents taught it with love, but because they taught it with a mission. I grew up with my younger brother, Ethan, who is 3 years my junior. From the outside, we looked like the perfect middle-class Cleveland family, but behind closed doors, things were seriously messed up. Ethan was the golden child, the miracle baby. Mom had a complicated pregnancy with him, and his first few years were rough, a blur of infections, breathing problems, and hospital trips. I remember sitting in those waiting rooms, a small boy trying to be brave for his parents, scared about my little brother. Even after he recovered, the illness became a shield, a permanent excuse. My parents, especially my dad, treated Ethan like he was made of glass. Meanwhile, I was expected to be perfect. By the time I was 7 years old, my life was a regimented schedule of straight A's and chores. I was the mini-adult, the responsible one who required no maintenance. The unfairness started small, but accumulated into a crushing weight. If Ethan skipped school to rest, it was a necessary break. If I was 5 minutes late to class, Dad would lose it. I remember in high school, I got detention for a single late arrival, and Dad grounded me for a whole week. That same month, Ethan literally ditched school to hang out at the mall, and my parents barely offered a verbal warning. The lack of accountability for Ethan felt like a physical rejection of me. It taught me that my effort was worthless, while Ethan's existence was priceless. When I was 15, I started working for my dad's small residential plumbing business. I didn't choose it because I loved pipes and fittings. I chose it because it was the only way to get close to my dad. It was a bid for his attention, a desperate attempt to prove my value. The bitter irony is that I was actually pretty good at it. I had the patience and the focus Dad lacked. I'd watch him handle complicated jobs, then stay up reading technical manuals and watching YouTube videos to understand the theory behind the practice. I was determined to master the trade, even though my original motivation was just a craving for a simple nod of approval. Dad's operation was modest: a small office, 2 battered vans, and about 5 to 6 guys on the payroll during the busy seasons. It was a decent, stable business with a solid local reputation. Founded 35 years ago. It paid the bills and kept us comfortable, but it lacked ambition. Ethan, however, was the definition of wasted potential. He was smart when it suited him, but possessed zero work ethic. He clung to the sick kid narrative to avoid real effort. He tried college, dropped out due to stress. He tried drop shipping, failed instantly. He lost $15,000 of Dad's investment money day trading. Yet, I was the one who still received the lectures about supporting my brother and putting family first. It was unbearable. I loved him because he was my brother, but living in the shadow of his entitlement was suffocating. By the time I was 20, I was essentially running the day-to-day operations. I was the one organizing the trucks before dawn and staying late to finish the paperwork. Customers began requesting me specifically because they knew I would do the job right the first time, not just quickly. While Dad handled the big picture networking and relied on his connections for initial business, I had become the indispensable backbone of the company. I saw the potential for growth far beyond what Dad had built. I self-studied complex systems, water filtration, tankless heaters, commercial installations. Dad was old school and resisted change, but I pushed to modernize. When I suggested expanding into commercial kitchen installations or securing maintenance contracts with apartment complexes, Dad would half-heartedly agree, then stall. The truly infuriating part was that even when I landed major clients or nailed huge projects, Dad would subtly redirect the credit. He'd praising for answering the phone sometimes, or say Ethan's innovative ideas somehow smoothed the client relationship, even if the idea was as basic as suggesting we get a website in 2025. I spent weeks courting a major restaurant chain, 6 locations needing complete plumbing overhauls. I put together the detailed proposals, met with the owners multiple times, and worked out a competitive, profitable bid. When we landed the $85,000 contract, Dad threw a little celebration and toasted Ethan for helping organize the paperwork. Ethan had literally just stacked the final proposal pages and put them in a folder. That was my life. He'd build the tower, watch Ethan cut the ribbon. As soon as I had saved enough, I bought my own place, a modest 3-bedroom ranch about 20 minutes away. Close enough to work, but far enough to breathe. It needed TLC, and I spent every weekend fixing it up, replacing the dated cabinets, refinishing the hardwood floors. It became my sanctuary, the one place where my effort and its result were perfectly aligned, without competition or judgment. I started thinking seriously about getting my master plumber's license and starting my own business one day. I wanted something that was unequivocally, solely mine. The move to my own house marked the first physical separation from the toxic environment. But the business remained the one constant, the one place I still sought validation. That house, a modest ranch that had seen better days, was more than just a place to sleep. It was tangible proof of my efforts, a clean slate where my energy wasn't diluted by Ethan's chaos or Dad's unfair judgment. I spent weekends ripping out old, stained carpet, revealing and painstakingly refinishing the beautiful hardwood floors hidden underneath. The work was therapeutic. Slept. A form of active meditation where the quality of the result was directly proportional to the effort I put in. It was a simple, honest equation I never got at home. I finally felt steady, settled in the knowledge that I could build something separate from the family drama, something that was just mine. This stability set the stage for meeting Olivia. I was 27, and she was 26, and she walked into my life during a major bathroom renovation job at a sprawling, fancy downtown condo building. She worked there as the property manager. And the first time I saw her, she was arguing fiercely with a crew of flooring guys. These contractors were trying to cut corners on the waterproofing membrane, a critical step that prevents catastrophic leaks. Olivia was not having it. She cited building codes and specifications with a clear, firm voice, refusing to let them proceed until they did the job right. I was transfixed. Most property managers I dealt with only cared about speed and budget. They rarely had the technical knowledge or the courage to confront sloppy work. When the flooring guys finally scoffed and walked away, defeated, I approached her. "Nice to see someone who actually cares about doing things right," I said, genuinely impressed. She turned to me, still fired up, her dark hair slightly messy from the confrontation. She didn't smile or try to be cute. She just looked me straight in the eye and delivered a line that became the foundation of our entire relationship. "If you are not going to do it right, why bother doing it at all?" I remember thinking, where has this woman been all my life? Olivia had a degree in construction management and was genuinely interested in the mechanics of the plumbing work. We were doing. Slept. She didn't just inspect our progress to tick a box. She asked intelligent, probing questions because she wanted to learn. She told me she learned much of her knowledge from her dad, who was a general contractor. I shared my own ideas about modernizing Dad's old school business. We clicked instantly. It was the first time I met someone who respected my expertise without the baggage of family history. We even joked about starting a support group for responsible siblings, as she had a similar situation with a younger sister who could do no wrong. After that massive condo project ended, Olivia called the office reporting an urgent plumbing problem at her apartment. When Dad sent me out to check it, I found absolutely nothing wrong. She'd made up the problem just to see me again. I laughed at the sheer audacity of the smooth move. From there, we started dating. Olivia was different from anyone I'd ever been with. She was straightforward and honest. She didn't play games or expect me to read her mind. If something bothered her, she just said it. If she was happy, it showed. She quickly became invested in my career, helping me study for my advanced license exams, and eventually started helping with the administrative side of the family business. In less than a year, Olivia completely revolutionized our operations, becoming an invaluable asset. She set up a digital scheduling system, streamlined our billing process, and created formal contracts to replace Dad's old, handwritten quote sheets. Dad wasn't thrilled about trading his pen and paper system for computer monitors, but even he had to admit the business was running better. Much better. We were more organized, more professional, and honestly, more profitable than we had ever been. We moved in together after 2 years. I cleared out the smallest bedroom for her to use as a home office, and we began making the house ours. We painted the rooms in colors we chose together, replaced the old furniture, and decorated the walls with photos of us. We started talking about getting married and having kids. Olivia would joke that our future children would be plumbing prodigies and continue the family business. I genuinely thought I finally had everything figured out. A true partner who was competent, loyal, and who saw my worth. At first, my family loved Olivia. Mom would invite us over for dinner and ask Olivia for advice on computer issues or home renovation tips. Even Dad softened, acknowledging, in his begrudging way, how much she was helping the company grow. We were landing bigger commercial contracts and building a serious reputation in Cleveland. Olivia even got along with Ethan, which was the only point of contention between us. When his constant mistakes or laziness would irritate me, she would tell me I should try to understand him better, reminding me that his childhood health problems might have affected his maturity. He's trying in his own way, she'd say when I vented about him showing up late or messing up an order. I should have seen that as a massive, flashing red flag, a neon sign pointing toward trouble. But when you trust someone completely, when they have become the stable center of your chaotic life, it is hard, maybe impossible, to see the warning signs. After 4 years together, we got engaged. It wasn't fancy. I proposed at home after we finished planning a major plumbing renovation for a new restaurant chain. We had been up late reviewing blueprints and coordinating logistics. It just felt right. We were partners in every sense of the word. I remember getting down on one knee in the living room, surrounded by blueprints and contract drafts, and saying, "I know this isn't the most romantic setting, but this is us building something together, and I want to keep building with you forever." She cried, said yes, and we set the wedding date for the following spring. It was simple, real, and totally us. slept. The engagement should have been a celebration of our successful future. But it was the quiet entry of Ethan back into the office that began to unravel everything. For 4 years, Olivia and I had worked tirelessly, building a stable life and a profitable business. We were planning a modest, outdoor wedding for about 75 people the following spring. It felt perfect. But a little over a year ago, the cracks started to appear. Ethan had finally blown through whatever remaining money Dad had given him, trying to launch some crypto trading scam that collapsed spectacularly. He came back broke, defeated, and was immediately given a job at our office by Dad. At first, Ethan was relegated to answering phones, filing papers, and scheduling non-critical appointments, the basic admin tasks Olivia had streamlined. But Ethan always had a way of worming himself into the center of things. Meanwhile, Olivia started spending more and more time at my parents' house. She said she was helping Mom with the wedding plans, and that it was quieter there, allowing her to focus on critical company paperwork. Since I was out in the field most days, working 10 and 12-hour shifts to save for our future, it seemed logical at the time. I was on job sites 20 or 30 miles away, buried under ductwork or crawling through basements, while they were sitting at a clean desk. As the month passed, though, small details started to bother me, little things that didn't add up. Olivia, who used to share everything with me, suddenly changed her phone password. When I asked about it, trying to sound casual, she brushed it off, claiming it was a new security requirement for one of the banking apps she managed for the business. I told myself it was fine, just a sign of her increased professionalism. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Then Ethan started acting different, too. The lazy, perpetual victim was gone, replaced by a strangely motivated man. He started wearing expensive new cologne, showing up to work on time, and investing in new clothes. He was suddenly weirdly polite, offering to stay late at the office, and seen and learnedly interested in learning the business side of things, a sharp contrast to his previous aversion to any real effort. What really caught my attention, the thing that made my stomach clench, was the way Olivia started talking about him. She'd get oddly excited talking about how well he was managing the schedule and how smart he was when he applied himself. She'd also get hyper defensive whenever I pointed out any of his mistakes, going so far as to take his side in family arguments. I remember one Sunday dinner at my parents' place. Ethan had miscalculated some critical numbers on a major estimate we were working on, potentially costing us thousands of dollars if I hadn't caught it during my final review. When I brought it up privately, Olivia jumped in immediately. "Everyone makes mistakes, Ross. At least he's trying to learn the business side of things," she said, her voice sharp with uncharacteristic defensiveness. I remember looking at her, confused and hurt. It was a cold shock. This was the same woman who had spent 3 extra hours redoing a proposal 6 months ago because of a $50 calculation error. She had zero tolerance for sloppiness, yet now she was defending negligence that could have bankrupted us. The office vibe got weird, too. We have a receptionist, Linda, who's been with Dad for 15 years. She was like a second mother to Ethan and me, the quiet, steady constant. She started giving me these strange, pitying looks that I couldn't decipher. She'd start to say something when we were alone, then stop herself, looking quickly over her shoulder. One time, she handed me a stack of invoices, leaned in, and just said, "You're a good man, Ross. Remember that." It was a strange, heavy warning, but I was so busy, so determined to keep building our future, that I didn't press her. I couldn't afford to see the trouble right in front of me. Then one afternoon, Linda called me into her small, cluttered office and closed the door. Linda was never one to beat around the bush. She was direct and practical. But that day, she seemed nervous, fidgeting constantly with her reading glasses. "Ross, have you noticed anything strange with Olivia and Ethan lately?" she asked carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged, a tight, cold knot forming in my gut. "What do you mean, Linda?" Linda hesitated, looking down at her desk calendar. "Just that they seem to be spending a lot of time together when you are out on jobs. Long lunches. Late evenings." "Well, they are both working in the office now," I said, reciting the rational excuse I had given myself for months. "That's not what I mean, dear," Linda said, meeting my eyes now, her expression heartbroken. She took a deep, shaky breath, like she was bracing herself for impact. "Listen, I care about you. You're like a son to me. Maybe you should come back early from your job tomorrow. Just see for yourself." The way she said it, the desperate sincerity in her eyes, sounded the final alarm I couldn't ignore. I tried to get her to be more specific, to give me something solid, but she wouldn't say another word. She just patted my hand, the familiar, calloused warmth of her touch feeling alien and sorrowful now. "I hope I'm wrong, Ross," she whispered. "I truly hope I am wrong." I asked Olivia about it that night, trying to be casual, testing the waters. Linda seemed paranoid today. "Asking about you and Ethan," I said. Olivia immediately dismissed it. "Linda's just being dramatic. You know how she gets with her soap operas. She's probably bored and making up stories in her head." I didn't fully buy it, but the thought that my fiancé and my brother could betray me was so repulsive, so fundamentally destructive, that I locked the suspicion away. There are some lines you just don't cross. And I desperately needed to believe they hadn't crossed them. Ignoring Linda's warning felt like choosing ignorance over pain. But I knew I had to see the truth for myself if I was ever going to move forward. The next day, I told my crew at the Hartman Project, a big commercial bathroom remodel downtown, that I needed to grab some extra specialty fittings from the main shop. It was a plausible lie. The job site was about 30 minutes from the office. I made up an excuse, saying I'd be back in an hour, and drove the van with a knot tightening in my chest. The drive was slow. The traffic lights seemed to hold me hostage, each second drawing out the agony of anticipation. When I arrived at the office, I didn't go in through the main entrance. I used the back door that opens directly into the warehouse, where we store inventory and large equipment. The warehouse smelled of PVC glue, metal shavings, and diesel fuel, the honest smells of my trade. As I walked silently through the aisles of pipe and water heaters toward the main office area, I heard laughter spilling out from the break room. It was Olivia's laugh, clear and bright, quickly followed by Ethan's familiar, high-pitched chuckle. They didn't hear me coming because the radio was playing an old rock station too loud. I stopped just outside the break room doorway and simply watched. Ethan had his arm draped casually around Olivia's waist, his thumb lazily tracing the small of her back. Way too close. Way too familiar for a future brother-in-law. They were huddled over something on her phone, heads bent close together, laughing in that intimate way people do when they share a private joke. His fingers were gently playing with the hem of her shirt. When they looked up and saw me standing there, framed in the doorway, the laughter died instantly. They sprung apart, as if they had been hit by an electric shock. The movement was sharp, unnatural, a clear admission of guilt. "What's going on here?" I demanded. My voice was low and steady, not the scream of rage I felt building inside me, but the controlled rumble of absolute certainty. I stared directly at Ethan, noting the panic in his eyes, the immediate rush of red to his face. "Nothing, man. Just looking at some funny memes," Ethan stammered, pulling his hands into his pockets. Olivia nodded too eagerly, trying to appear nonchalant. "Yeah. Just taking a break. How's the Hartman job going?" "I thought you'd be there all day." I didn't answer her question. I just stood there, taking in the scene. Slept. The distance they'd had just created between them. The unnatural brightness of Olivia's cheeks. The way Ethan refused to meet my eyes. I didn't need a confession. The truth was written all over their clumsy, panicked bodies. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. I turned and walked straight out the back door, got into the van, and drove back to the job site. I wasn't going to give them the dignity of a screaming match at the office. That's not my style. I handle my business. I got back to the Hartman project and finished my work like nothing had happened. I installed the commercial-grade mixing valves, triple-checked the pressure regulators, and signed off on the permit forms. My mind was racing, a chaotic internal storm, but on the outside, I was stone cold. I was the reliable one. I knew the confrontation had to happen on my terms, in my space. That night, when I got home, Olivia was acting overly attentive. She asked about my day, said she was thinking about ordering my favorite takeout, and kept trying to make physical contact. It was a performance, a frantic attempt to cover the fissure that had just appeared. I played along, offering short, vague answers. The next morning, I deliberately left my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter when I went to shower. When I came back out, Olivia was on the other side of the room, looking startled, moving away from the counter too quickly. I knew she'd been checking it, desperate to see if I'd texted Linda or Ethan. I said nothing, just got dressed, and headed to work. I had my own score to settle. Later that day, Linda cornered me in the storage room. She had this determined, almost defiant look on her face, and I knew whatever was coming wasn't going to be vague this time. "I am sorry, Ross, but I can't watch this anymore," she said in a low, fierce voice, her eyes darting nervously toward the main office door. "They have been having an affair for months. Everyone knows except you." The quiet confirmation was like a punch to the gut. The air went out of me, but I didn't flinch. I just nodded slowly, absorbing the brutal finality of the words. It was the confirmation of everything I had feared, and the truth, though devastating, was strangely clarifying. "I've seen them kissing in the parking lot, when they think nobody is looking," Linda continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Last month, they both took an extra long lunch and came back in the same car looking, well, you know. I couldn't let it keep going without telling you." She reached out and briefly squeezed my forearm. "You deserve better, kid." I thanked her, my face feeling like marble. I spent the rest of the day going through the motions, finishing the installation of a new industrial grease trap, focusing on the mechanics of the job because that's what I do. I handle my business. That night I confronted Olivia directly. No games, no traps, no beating around the bush. I didn't want the drama or the lies. I needed the truth so I could eliminate the toxicity immediately. "Are you sleeping with my brother?" I asked as soon as she walked in the door. She froze instantly, her face draining of color. She started stammering denials, her eyes darting around the room, but her face told me everything I needed to know. "Linda told me everything." "Don't bother lying," I said, keeping my voice level, dangerously calm. How long? Olivia broke down crying, claiming it only happened a few times and that it was a huge mistake. But when I pressed harder, demanding the timeline, the full truth came out. They'd been seeing each other behind my back for at least 3 months, maybe more. I don't know how it happened. She sobbed, collapsing onto the nearest chair. We were working late at the office, and I am so sorry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the nearest lamp. That's not my style. Instead, I stood over her, the calmness more terrifying than any rage. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the water main before removing a fixture, I stated, the words clipped and precise. A mistake is ordering the wrong parts. Sleeping with your brother's fiancée for 3 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice you made every single time. I didn't budge when she begged and pleaded, saying we could work it out, that it was over between her and Ethan, that she'd made a terrible mistake. Pack what you can carry tonight. You have until the weekend to get the rest of your stuff. I want you gone. When you cross a line like that, when you violate the trust I put in you, there is no going back. I have always been the kind of man who stands by his principles, and I wasn't about to compromise them for a liar and a cheat. What about the wedding? She asked, tears streaming down her face. We had deposits on the venue, the photographer. I'll eat the costs, I said. Consider that the price of finding out who you really are before it was too late. She moved out the next day, and I immediately began canceling everything. I lost about $3,000 in deposits. But honestly, it felt like a small price to pay compared to a divorce 2 years down the road. I thought ending the engagement was the hard part, the ultimate crisis that I had controlled and survived. I was wrong. The earth had one final, catastrophic tremor left in it. For 2 weeks, I functioned on autopilot. I focused on work, the only dependable constant in my life. I ignored calls from my parents and Ethan, assuming Olivia had delivered the news. I told the guys at the job site that Olivia and I had broken up, leaving it vague, and they were decent enough not to press for details. Then, 2 weeks after I kicked Olivia out, she called me, crying, asking to meet. I agreed, but only at a coffee shop. Neutral territory, a public place where she couldn't try any of her old manipulation tactics in private. When she arrived, she looked terrible, completely unlike the polished, efficient woman I had known. Her hair was pulled back messily, and she wore no makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. I'm pregnant, she blurted out before I even had a chance to slide into my seat. My world, which I had just spent 2 weeks carefully cementing back together, shattered again. It wasn't the kind of shock you see in the movies, where a man realizes he's going to be a father. This was like getting blindsided by a semi-truck. My stomach dropped, and the blood rushed from my head. For a split second, my mind went to the worst possible place. What if it's mine? The thought of being tied to this woman, to the woman who had stabbed me in the back and twisted the knife with my own brother, sent a wave of icy cold dread through my entire body. I wanted to disappear. I forced myself to remain calm on the outside, a practiced defense mechanism. I looked at her, searching her panicked eyes for the truth. It's Ethan's, isn't it? I asked, wanting it to be the answer, needing the relief of full separation. She nodded slightly, then hesitated, trying to claw back some leverage. I don't know for sure. It could be yours. The timing is. I cut her off, my voice a flat line. Does he know? I told him yesterday, she whispered, burying her face in her hands. I got up. I had the rest of the house to saved. I didn't pay attention to her renewed sobs or her desperate pleas for me to stay. I simply walked out and drove straight to my parents' house. I knew a phone call wouldn't suffice. This kind of toxic truth needed to be delivered in person. I found Ethan in Dad's home office, looking nervous, as if he knew the hammer was finally about to fall. Dad was there, reviewing some invoices, his brow furrowed. "You got anything you want to tell me?" I asked Ethan, my voice dangerously calm, the quiet before a storm. Ethan stammered something about how it just happened. And they didn't mean to fall for each other. Dad looked from Ethan to me, confused, then shocked as the reality dawned on him. "You're telling me, proudly, that you've been sleeping with my fiancée?" I asked. Slept. Clenching my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. When Ethan nodded, shame finally coloring his features, I didn't lose it like most guys would. I didn't shout. I laughed. It was a cold, hard, genuine laugh of pure, absurd disbelief that made both of them flinch. "And now she's pregnant," I stated, nodding slowly. "Congratulations, Dad." Ethan's finally stepping up in life. Dad immediately started trying to mediate, spouting platitudes about working this out as a family. But I cut him off. "I'm done. I'm out of the business, and I'm out of this family. You've chosen your sides for the last 30 years, and nothing's changed." As I turned to leave, Dad grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Son, wait. The business needs you. We can figure this out." I pulled my arm away instantly. "Should have thought about that before you let him get away with everything his entire life." "Don't be dramatic, Ross," Dad said, his voice hardening, adopting that stern, parental tone he used when I was a kid. "Blood is thicker than water. Family sticks together through everything." "Does that include screwing your brother's fiancée?" I asked. Dad actually flinched this time. "It was a mistake," Ethan finally said, having the audacity to look genuinely ashamed. "We never meant for this to happen." I looked at him with pure, distilled disgust. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the water main before removing a fixture. A mistake is ordering the wrong parts. Sleeping with your brother's fiancée for 3 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice you made every single time. I walked out and didn't look back. Mom called that night, leaving tearful voicemails about healing and forgiveness, but I ignored them. I needed space to process, to grieve, and most importantly, to figure out my next move. When I got home, I started making calls. I contacted all my major clients, the ones I had personally cultivated, telling them I was leaving the family business, but recommending other quality plumbers in the area. None of them worked for my dad's company. Then I called a buddy who worked at Marshall Plumbing, a competitor, and asked if they were hiring. They offered me a job on the spot, better pay, better hours, and no family drama. The next day, I went into the office before anyone else arrived and collected my personal tools and the few items I kept in my desk. Linda came in as I was finishing up. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked, looking sad but not surprised. "Yeah," I said. "Can't work here anymore." "Not with them." She hugged me. A long, genuine embrace, something she'd never done in all the years I'd known her. "You're making the right call, Ross. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned." I thanked her for her loyalty and honesty. Then I left my keys on my desk and walked out for the last time. But the final shockwave hadn't hit yet. A few evenings later, Mom showed up at my door, begging me to come to a family meeting. "Your father has a solution," she promised. "Please, Just hear him out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not for Dad or Ethan, but for Mom. When I arrived, all of them were there. Olivia too, sitting awkwardly on the couch, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, in a weirdly possessive way. Dad cleared his throat and laid out his brilliant plan, the final confirmation that my life had always been secondary to Ethan's convenience. Since Olivia and Ethan are expecting a child, they should get married, he began. And I think it makes sense for Ethan to take over the family business eventually. He's shown real interest lately. I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't even angry laughter. It was genuine, wary amusement at how predictable this all was. You want me to come back and train the guy who stabbed me in the back to take over the business I helped build? I asked, still smiling at the absurdity. The business is still in my name, Ross. Dad reminded me, his voice harder now. And family sticks together. He laid out the deal. I'd come back, train Ethan in all aspects of the business, and eventually hand over the reins to him. Meanwhile, Ethan and Olivia would marry and raise their child together as one big happy family. I couldn't believe the level of entitlement. I was seeing red, but all I did was stand up, looking each of them in the eye. Let me be clear, I said. I'm done with all of you. Ethan, you're not my brother anymore. Dad, you've always chosen him, so keep choosing him. Mom, I'm sorry you got caught in the middle. I looked at Olivia last. If that baby turns out to be mine, contact my lawyer. I'll support my child. But you and I are done forever. As I walked out, Dad called after me, his voice sharp and suddenly panicked. You're making a mistake. Without you, this business won't survive. I turned back one last time. That sounds like your problem now. You're being selfish, Dad shouted, throwing the ultimate insult at the person who was always taught to sacrifice himself. That made me stop and turn around. Slept. What exactly has this family done for me, Dad? Given me a job where I work twice as hard as everyone else for half the recognition. Let me build your business while you gave all the credit to Ethan. Or maybe you mean raising me to be responsible while teaching Ethan that actions don't have consequences. I shook my head, my face devoid of emotion. If walking away from that makes me selfish, then I guess I'm selfish. With the toxic weight lifted, the 6 months that followed weren't quiet. They were the sound of my life, finally being built on solid ground. The week after I walked out of my father's house, leaving the poisoned legacy behind, felt like stepping out of a dark, stagnant building into fresh air. I had spent my entire adult life trying to earn a seat at a table where I was never truly wanted. Now, I was building my own table, and the freedom felt intoxicating. I started work at Marshall Plumbing the following Monday. The culture was night and day compared to my dad's operation. Marshall was larger, more organized, and professionally run. There was no family drama, no favoritism, just a straightforward meritocracy. My skill set, which my father had always taken for granted, was instantly recognized and valued. I was put on major commercial projects immediately. My new supervisor, a seasoned veteran named Rick, trusted my expertise and didn't feel the need to second-guess my proposals or my methodology. He treated me like a partner, not a pawn. The greatest triumph came quickly. Within 4 months, I scheduled and passed my master plumber's license exam. This wasn't just a certification. It was a huge professional milestone that my dad had repeatedly told me I wasn't ready for, despite me running his entire field operation for a decade. The license represented my ultimate, undeniable competence, earned completely without his help or hindrance. Rick and the management team at Marshall celebrated the achievement, immediately promoting me and putting me in charge of a dedicated team for larger installations. I was being groomed for a management position, a path my father would never have offered me. I was making more money, working better hours, and feeling respected for the first time in my career. My personal life mirrored the professional success. I put the old ranch house up for sale. I needed a clean break, a geographical and psychological distance from the old neighborhood. I bought a small but solid house in a completely different part of town, about 40 miles from my parents' place. It wasn't fancy, but it was structurally sound and located in a peaceful, quiet neighborhood. The house needed cosmetic work, new paint, new fixtures, a complete overhaul of the dated bathroom. And fixing things with my hands had always been my therapy. I spent my weekends ripping out old carpet, restoring the place one honest piece of labor at a time. The physical work of building something new and beautiful by myself served as an emotional reset. Every nail I drove, every floorboard I sanded, was an act of personal restoration. I was no longer competing for recognition. I was simply enjoying the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. No toxic family stuff, no comparisons, just me focusing on my career and rebuilding my life, piece by piece. During this time, I had almost zero contact with my family. Mom would occasionally text something vague about healing or this being missed, which I politely ignored. My silence was not born of petty spite, but necessary self-preservation. I knew I couldn't move forward if I kept looking over my shoulder. Then, about 4 months into my new life, I got a text from Linda, the former receptionist. "You're doing well, right?" "I hope so," the message read. I immediately called her. She was thrilled to hear from me. She told me she had quit Dad's company about a month after I left. "I couldn't stand it, Ross," she confessed. "The atmosphere changed instantly. Your father was never there, and Ethan was trying to run the schedule. He was overriding the experienced plumbers, making huge errors, and showing up late or not at all. It was heartbreaking to watch the reputation you built just fall apart." She told me she had landed a new job at a dental office with better pay and normal hours. "I had to go," she sighed. "I couldn't watch them run the business into the ground." It was clear as day what was going to happen. She confirmed that Ethan and Olivia had gotten married quickly in a courthouse ceremony. No reception, no fanfare, just making it official before the pregnancy became too obvious. The detail that stuck with me was the wedding gift. Dad apparently gave them $20,000 to use as a down payment on a house. $20,000 handed to the irresponsible son and the opportunist who betrayed me. This was the same dad who had told me, the hard-working son, I needed to build credit and prove responsibility before he would sign my first apartment lease when I was 22. Linda ended the call with a chilling confirmation of my own prediction. "Karma's already circling, Ross. Won't be long now. You're the one who got out clean." Her words weren't a source of celebration, but a cold realization. I hadn't wished for their failure, but I had predicted it because the foundation of their success was built on entitlement, not effort. Now, I was watching that shaky foundation crumble from a safe distance, thriving in my new life. I felt vindicated. But mostly, I felt free. My success was my own. Earned, not handed down, and it tasted sweeter than any inheritance ever could. I knew their downfall was inevitable. But hearing my mother's broken voice on the phone brought the reality crashing down, and I realized how swift the price of favoritism had been. I was nearly 6 months into my new life, fully settled in my career at Marshall Plumbing, when my phone rang, late one Tuesday evening. It was my mother. I almost didn't answer, but the relentless, panicked ringing finally broke my resolve. When I picked up, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Her voice was raw and ragged, utterly stripped of its usual composure. "Ross, please," she sobbed. "Listen, the business is failing. We're gonna lose everything. Please, talk to your father." A cold wave of vindication, mixed with genuine sorrow for my mother, washed over me. I had predicted this, but the speed of the collapse was shocking. I asked her to put Dad on the phone. When he took the phone, the change in his voice was immediate and jarring. This wasn't the confident, controlling man who had wielded guilt like a weapon for 30 years. He sounded broken, thin, and old. His commanding presence was gone, replaced by the shaky, desperate tone of a man losing control of his world. He laid out the financial and operational wreckage that Ethan had managed to create in just 6 months. The business was in freefall. He ruined 3 major commercial contracts, Ross. Dad confessed, his voice trembling. Basic, unforgivable mistakes. He installed the wrong size pipes on the high-pressure system for the new downtown brewery. The client is suing us for $75,000 in damages. He paused, his breath catching painfully. He failed to pull permits on 2 other big jobs. We're facing huge fines from the city. Ethan had taken my meticulous, profitable system and replaced it with a disaster. Instead of hiring experienced plumbers to replace me, which would have been the bare minimum, Ethan had hired his old college buddies who didn't know a P-trap from a pipe wrench. Most of the veteran staff, including 2 guys who'd been with the company for over a decade, had quit. They walked because Ethan would override their expertise on jobs, insisting they do things his way, which was inevitably wrong. The financial news was even worse, a sickening tale of recklessness. He took out a $120,000 loan against the business, Ross, without telling anyone. Dad admitted, the shame evident in his voice. The money, it's vanished. The company credit cards are maxed out, and the suppliers are refusing to extend any more credit because of unpaid bills dating back 4 months. I felt a cold, calculated anger. Slept. I pictured the new expensive truck Ethan was driving, the designer clothes he wore, all while the business checking account was overdrawn. "We need you back, son," Dad pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'll sign over 75% of the business. You can run it however you want. Just save us." "What about Ethan?" I asked, my voice flat, giving away nothing. There was a long silence, heavy and full of defeat. "Hay and Olivia aren't together anymore. She left town last week. Just disappeared. Left him a note saying not to contact her. We don't know where she is or anything about the baby." I honestly wasn't surprised. Olivia had always been ambitious and pragmatic. Once she realized Ethan wasn't the golden ticket, once he started demonstrating his inherent irresponsibility by ruining the company and facing lawsuits, she cut her losses. Classic opportunism. She found the faster horse and rode it out of Cleveland. I thought about Dad's offer for exactly 2 seconds. It was everything I had wanted 6 months ago. The recognition, the control, the admission that I was right all along. Now, it was toxic trash. "Not my problem anymore, Dad," I replied firmly. "But your mother. We might lose the house." He tried again, going straight for the guilt. "Mom is welcome to stay with me anytime," I replied, my boundary absolute. "You and Ethan can figure out your own arrangements. Dad launched into the usual guilt trip about family loyalty, but I cut him off. My voice sharp and final. Remember when I told you Ethan would destroy the business? Remember how you chose him anyway? Well, this is what you chose. I hung up, leaving him stranded in the wreckage he had enabled. A week later, just as I was installing the finishing trim in my newly painted kitchen, a text message came in. It was from Olivia. The baby is yours. I have the test results. Ethan took all my money and disappeared. Please help me. My heart didn't skip a beat or pound with panic. It simply hardened. The vindication was absolute. Ethan had not only destroyed the business, but he had betrayed Olivia, too. Stealing the money she thought she was securing by choosing him over me. I took a screenshot of the message and immediately forwarded it to my lawyer without replying to her. If the baby is mine, I'll do right by my child. I am not my brother, I don't run from responsibility. But Olivia burned that bridge with gasoline, and every interaction moving forward would be handled through legal counsel. She made her choice. She made her choice. Now she would live with the consequences of that choice. The failure was complete, but the last act, the final plea, was yet to come. 2 days after receiving Olivia's desperate text, Dad showed up at my new house unannounced. I was outside, loading some lumber I'd purchased for a new shelving unit in the garage. He pulled up not in his usual shiny work truck, which I knew they had sold to cover some business debts, but in my mom's old sedan. He looked terrible. He was noticeably thinner, his posture was slumped, and his face was lined with a kind of defeat I had never seen before. He looked 20 years older than the last time I had seen him. "Can we talk, Ross?" he asked, his voice low and heavy, utterly devoid of its old bluster. I let him in. I did it partly out of habit, but mostly because I wanted him to see the evidence of my success. My new house wasn't huge, but it was pristine. The living room was freshly painted a calm gray. The new furniture was in place, and everything was neat and organized. A stark contrast to the financial and emotional chaos I knew he was carrying. Dad sat awkwardly on my new couch, sinking into the cushions, looking utterly out of place. He pulled out a thin folder of documents and laid it on my freshly refinished coffee table. "The business is bankrupt, Ross," he said, his eyes fixed on the folder. "2 clients are suing. The bank is foreclosing on our house next month." He pushed the papers toward me. "I'm signing the business over to you. 100%. No conditions. You can save it. 6 months ago, this would have been everything I wanted: the full control, the recognition, the definitive admission that I was the right choice all along. Now, holding the folder, I just felt a profound, weary emptiness. The prize had turned into a toxic liability. "What happened to Ethan?" I asked. Dad finally looked up, his expression swimming in shame. "He cleaned out our savings account, Ross. About $28,000. He disappeared a few days after Olivia left. Left a note saying he needed space to find himself." He shook his head, the gesture one of bitter realization. Classic Ethan. Running away from his problems. He didn't even take most of his clothes, just the cash and a couple of credit cards. He tried one last, desperate appeal. "He's still your son, Ross." I looked him straight in the eye, determined to deliver the final truth without flinching. "He stopped being my brother the day he betrayed me." Sound familiar? Dad flinched violently. Physically reacting to the forced mirror I held up to his own lifelong betrayal of me. "If we worked together, we could rebuild," he tried, grasping for the last shreds of his authority. "Be a family again." I laughed, a quiet, humorless sound that settled the air between us. Dad. You're not listening. I don't want your failing business. I don't need your help. I'm doing great on my own. But it's your legacy, too, he insisted, falling back on the familiar word that had always meant control and obligation. My legacy. I stood up. My legacy is being the guy who stands on his own 2 feet. The guy who doesn't need a hand. Me down business from someone who never appreciated him anyway. Dad sat quietly for a long time, the weight of his losses crushing him. He finally asked, in a small, defeated voice, "Where did I go wrong?" I could have listed a lifetime of favoritism. Every ignored achievement, every excuse made for Ethan. It wouldn't have mattered. He wouldn't have heard it. I kept my answer simple and absolute. You didn't fail, Dad. You got exactly what you wanted. Ethan at the helm. You earned this. He left looking defeated, driving away in Mom's old sedan. Later that week, Mom texted me. She said they were moving in with her sister in Columbus next month. Dad would have to look for work there. She asked if I could host them, and I repeated my offer, firm as granite. She was welcome anytime, but only her. I had drawn the boundary around the toxicity, not the individual person. As for my own life, I've been seeing someone new for a few weeks now. Her name is Clara. I met her because she's a project manager at one of the commercial sites where Marshall is working. She's smart, straightforward, and intensely independent. We're taking it slow, doing things right. She asked about my family, and I just said, we're not close. Maybe someday, I'll tell her the whole story. But right now, I'm just enjoying the honesty. And Olivia and the baby. If the baby is mine, I'll step up. That responsibility is paramount. I'm not my brother, I don't run from my duties. But everything will be handled through my lawyers. She made her choice when she prioritized opportunism over loyalty, and I will not allow her to turn my compassion for my child into a foothold back into my life. I don't feel happy seeing my family crash and burn. I don't feel sad either. I just feel free. Free from the expectations, the comparisons, and the constant soul-crushing need to prove myself to people who never saw my worth. I had paid the price for that freedom, and it was worth every dollar and every tear. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving on and building something better without them. And that is exactly what I did